Mike Davis joins us on Against the Grain. I'm CS, links on againstthegrain.org. Well, what about all this talk, Mike, about carbon trading schemes and pollution offset mechanisms? What evidence is there that carbon emissions and fossil fuel consumption has declined or will, in fact, decline in response to these kinds of regimes?
Well, if you still manage to have, fundamentalist faith in markets, despite all that's happened to the economy in the last couple of months, you can still believe that, carbon trading will work. In fact, Europe, which supposedly has adopted the model carbon trading system, emissions have increased in Europe, and now that whole system is beginning to come apart at the seams as heavy industries faced with economic crisis demand exemptions. The Italians have flat out, refused to support the 2020 emissions goals. There's very, very little evidence that carbon trading can successfully be implemented on a scale that will reduce emissions. And of course, one of the most preeminent climate scientists, the original Cassandra who warned Congress about global warming 25 years ago, Jim Hansen, has recently argued that we have to make the most drastic reductions by 2015, or we're faced with a runaway greenhouse. And the implication of that is simply that having lost a whole decade in the Bush years to any kind of effective international coordination of mitigation efforts, now the burden of climate change is largely going to be passed to poor countries, poor tropical and subtropical countries, because an inevitable quotient of climate change is already in the system, and those countries least responsible for the accumulation of emissions are the ones that will bear the greatest impacts, not just in terms of natural disasters like floods and drought, but by permanent diminution in their agricultural output. Vast areas, including northeastern India, Pakistan, Mexico, Central America, the Maghreb, according to the most sophisticated studies, stand to suffer just devastating declines in agriculture. In a world where, as the United Nations warns us, we have to double agricultural output in the next generation to feed the next 1.5 or 2 billion human beings.
We have a couple minutes left. Well, political elites, elites in different countries, if we have to depend on them for real action on global warming, what stands in the way of that? What might their understanding of climate change and their ability to respond to it, how might that affect their willingness, their ability to come up with the political will to actually do something?
Well, unfortunately, because of the distribution of the impacts of climate change being so unequal and conforming in many ways to the current geography of inequality in the world, it removes part of the self-interest that richer countries and richer groups might have in mitigating climate change. In other words, climate change isn't like the War of the Worlds where, the Martians indiscriminately are trying to wipe out everybody regardless of social class or ethnicity. A lot of the projections show that actually the temperate northern hemisphere may experience some gains in agricultural output. Of course, there'll be huge costs, but they're nothing like the costs that poor countries would bear. So that suggests, short of some revolutionary empowerment of the poor or some unprecedented historical act of altruism, it's eventually going to make more sense for the rich countries to, spend money on adapting themselves and their, first-class, passengers of the planet, to climate change, and leave the rest to to the marketplace and into the inadequate means that poor countries have. This is effectively a concession to a kind of triage, of humanity.
Mike Davis, author of books like Buddha's Wagon, Planet of Slums. He co-authored the book No One is Illegal, Fighting Violence and State Repression on the U.S.-Mexico Border. And recently the book In Praise of Barbarians, Essays Against Empire was published by Haymarket Books. He is a radical scholar, San Diego-based historian and writer and political activist and journalist. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
And this is CS suggesting the important thing is not to stop questioning, and we will look for you next time. Against the Grain is produced by C.S. Song with associate producer H.N. Yuen. Please visit us online at againstthegrain.org, where you can submit comments and find ways to reach us. You can also call us at 510-848-6767, extension 670, and thanks to Jim Bennett, who is at the controls today.